Finance panel. This is going to last from 12:30 through, I believe, 1:30, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. And so we have three panelists that have taken some precious time out of their schedule to spend some time with us and share their wisdom and knowledge, and hopefully be able to give you some insight about the various career paths that we have in finance. So with us today, we have Greg LeNeave from Anderson, LeNeave and Company. We also have Melissa Miller from Bank of America, as well as Marty Bullard from Equitable Advisors. So these three panelists are going to join us today for the next hour to share in this panel discussion. So usually I want to start out the panel discussion with just a brief overview of who you are, which company do you work for, what's your role within that company, and what really led you into your career path that you're currently at. So we'll start out with Greg. Greg, can you hear me?
Well, I just had a great introduction you guys didn't hear. So no, thank you guys for allowing me to be here today. And really looking forward to spending the time with everybody here on the Zoom call, and hopefully you'll find it valuable. But born and raised in Charlotte, spent part of my college career in Chapel Hill. I'm an 81 graduate of App. I was a finance and econ major. I really thought I was going to work in my family business from the day that I graduated, and my father decided that was not going to be the case. So I started an internal audit with First Union, now Wells Fargo, and it was I took that job really because it paid about $3,000 more a year than the corporate development program back in 1981. And that was a lot of money in 1981. And they promised to send me through credit school and credit training. And again, I think one of the things we'll really talk about today is how important a training program is, really regardless of where you go. If you go into industry, if you go into financial services, just how important really having the exposure of a training program is. So I really used internal audit as a training program, and it was a great starting point. I spent two years there. I did go through my credit training program, and then I spent the next really 15 years doing leveraged finance for two institutions. Manufacturers Hanover was a money center bank in New York, now part of Chase today, and Barclays Bank. So did that for the first half of my career, and decided I wanted to move into investment banking, and made a lateral move to a middle market firm here in Charlotte, and spent a couple of years there. And we sold that company back to First Union, which for me was kind of unfortunate, but also was a great sort of platform to start our own firm, which we started in 1998, and we're a boutique investment banking firm. We focus on what we call lower middle market companies, and those are companies typically with 10 million to 100 million in revenues. And we do sell side work, meaning we're working with typically first time owners in the sale of their business. And that's about 80% of what we do. And then we do capital raising. We are a licensed broker dealer through both FINRA and the SEC. And so that financing work is typically the other 20% of what we do. So hope I wasn't too long-winded.
No, that was very good. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Melissa, same question, just a brief overview of your role within your company and what really led you to your career.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for having us today. So Melissa Miller, I'm with Bank of America. I'm an App grad, 1994 accounting and international business. I started my career actually with KPMG. I spent about 5 years in audit with KPMG, and then went to work for a company here in Charlotte called Selectron Technology, which is a contract manufacturing company, and worked in their finance group for about a little over 4 years. And then my husband and I decided we wanted to stay in Charlotte long term. And I said, well, I'm going to have to learn something about banking. And I don't know anything about banking right now. So went and joined Bank of America. It's actually 18 years ago this week. And joined within the technology finance team, and then moved around within the finance organization, which we are encouraged to do. So worked in technology finance, and then I was also the BFO for our banking center operations, then moved over to our corporate and commercial operations, still within finance, worked in global banking finance for a while, supporting our corporate bankers, so our client coverage bankers, and then moved into staff support finance in an enterprise role, and then ran our corporate allocations for a little while. About 3.5 years ago, after we had done process redesign and organizational redesign within our finance team, we launched operational excellence from a Bank of America perspective. And so a lot of the work we had done within finance, which I had helped lead, we were going to do at an enterprise level. So I actually left CFO and moved into our operational excellence team. So have been working through process assessment and process redesign for the last 3.5 years. So that is what I am doing now. And I have been in Charlotte the whole time.
Great, thank you. Marty, same question.
Yeah, mine's short and sweet, I think. And my whole family are app grads, which is kind of cool. There's a lot on here. I'm actually the only one in my family not an app grad. My daughter actually graduated from app as well a couple years ago. She's a speech major, not business, but great school, love the school. And one reason I'm on the call today, I'm a veteran, so I took a little different route. Went to college after getting out of the Army, and was in another position for about 13 years. And I had a financial advisor, and he happened to work for Equitable. And I was leaving the role that I was in. They wanted to move me at the time. I was a single dad. I mentioned my daughter, and I wasn't going to move. So what led me to this career was basically I liked the structure of the company. I liked their platform, and they'd always treated me right. And so it led me to what was then AXA, and now Equitable again. We went back to our original name, which is a full service financial firm. And I hire people now to work in basically the school system. You know, we still hire people as traditional advisors starting their own practice, but my role is a little different. I work for the retirement benefits group, and we hire people to go into school systems and help educators with 403B, which is much like our 401k. So for corporations, and that's it. That's pretty cut and dry.
All right, thank you, Marty. All right, so first question I'll start out with today is kind of a softball question, but I think it's very interesting. So for each of the three of you, what do you like most about your career in finance? We'll start out with Greg.
I really like the fact that every client's different, and if you ever liked a case study class in school, really every client's like a case study, except it's real life. And so I think that's what I think makes my job worth going into every day. I forget who said it, but not too long ago, somebody says, do you have a got to job or a get to job? And I'd say I get the privilege of doing my job every day. It really, it's a really important role to most of my clients. When somebody's doing something for only once in a life, and we talk about when people sell their business, that it's like getting married or having your first child or buying your first home. When you go to sell your business that you built, for a lot of folks, you're selling your baby. So we really take the importance and responsibility associated with that pretty seriously.
All right, same question to you, Melissa. What do you like most about your career in finance?
I'd have to say probably the flexibility of what you get to do. Because when you're in finance, you're going to support or work with lots of different industries, lots of different people here at the bank, lots of different lines of business. And so you can take your skill set and apply it in so many different ways. And even within finance, there are lots of different things you can do. You can go the financial advisor route. You can go the investment banking route. You can go the traditional, more CFO route. So I think just having the flexibility, and then also too, when you have a financial background and you understand how to read financials, how to create financials, and all those kinds of things. If you do decide to move out of a CFO organization like I did, I found those skills to be very, very valuable because not everybody thinks with a finance and accounting kind of brain, and that those skills are definitely needed in other areas. So I think just the flexibility to be able to move around and do a lot of different things with the educational background that I have has been really great.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Marty, same question. What do you like most about your career in finance?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's sounds a little repetitive or redundant, but I do like the income and the independence. We basically help people, and every day is different. I like that. I would get bored if I was in an office setting all the time. And most of our advisors work out of their home or a branch office, but a lot of times we work out of our vehicle. We're going to visit people and that kind of thing, or we're meeting clients at a Panera Bread or Starbucks, and we do a little bit of everything. So it could be a wealth management client, which is totally different than helping someone with life insurance, for example. And so I do like the helping of folks being socially responsible, and the independence of it all, but also getting paid for what you do. It's a nice career.
All right, thank you, Marty. So let's flip it around. Let's talk about what are the biggest challenges that you face in your current position, your current role, and we'll flip it around this time. We'll start out with you, Marty. So we've already talked about what you like most about your career. What is your current biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge, I think, is finding. I think it takes, and I have some notes here for myself, but I think it takes a unique person to do what we do in general. I think the finance industry is huge. It's very rewarding in more ways than financially, for sure. I mean, it's an amazing field. The biggest challenge is finding people that have the work ethic and drive that it takes to be successful. And I really don't think it doesn't matter what company you go to. Personally, I think you go to any financial firm, anywhere. If you have work ethic and you're coachable, I think that's what makes the difference. And finding those unique people are harder than it seems. I did 200 interviews last year, maybe a little over 200, and I hired 5 people. And so I think it's a very interesting person. I think you have to be very social, but you also have to be intelligent. I think you have to be an independent worker, and you have to be creative. And I think you have to be a lifelong student, because this industry is always changing. So the challenge would be, to answer your question, is finding that right person, the right fit.
All right, thank you, Marty. Melissa, same question to you. What is the current biggest challenge that you're facing right now in your position?
Well, for the work that I'm doing right now, when we do process redesign and process improvement, lots of times, of course, that takes investment on the company's behalf to be able to make those improvements. So you've got to be able to build the business case and say, well, why do we want to go do this? And so it's exciting, but it's also, the challenge is being able to work with folks all across the company to be able to look at what are the benefits of being able to make the investment. So one of the projects that I'm working on right now is around our collateral management. And so I'm working with folks within corporate treasury and within global risk to understand, what are some of the downstream impacts of some of the changes that we want to make to the way that we manage some of our collateral. So it's exciting and interesting, but I'm also having to learn a whole different language and part of the bank, and be able to then turn around and convey that to the folks that we need to be able to approve some of the investments. So it's just, being, as Marty was just saying, kind of constant lifelong learner, and just being able to continue to adapt and learn as you go. So, but that's probably my biggest challenge. And we also we're just a big company. So there are a lot of different people that you get to work with, but also need to work with. So being able to build and keep those relationships over the years, to be able to draw on those is exciting.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Greg, same question. What is your current biggest challenge right now in your position?
Sure. I think the pandemic has been a major impact on a lot of companies over the last 18 months. So one of the big challenges is, whether we're selling a business or raising bank financing or some type of institutional equity for a company is really looking at the impact that COVID has had on the business and really being able to make that argument to the investor or to the buyer that it's, you know, really just sort of a short-term impact and the long-term outlook for the company. There's really no diminished value to the business. So I think that's part of it. That's one big challenge today. Another really big challenge, again, sort of real time for us, is all the talk about tax law change in Washington today and how that impacts our business. And, you know, a lot of our clients, we are seeing a lot of business for folks that really want to get a deal done this year ahead of any potential tax change. And then, you know, the legislation or some of the talk last week that came out was that the capital gains tax changes would be retroactive to 2 or 3 weeks ago. So how does really all the discussion in Washington really affect whether we're going to do a deal the rest of the year or not do a deal? Certainly the legislative impact of that is a big challenge.
All right, thank you, Greg. So you mentioned recently that you know, the pandemic's been a potential challenge for not only your business, but I'm sure the pandemic's been a big challenge for everybody in here. At the same time, Marty, you mentioned that you interviewed 200 different people and you only hired 5 people. So that brings me to my next question. What is the current job market within your industry, and how has the pandemic altered that job market? And we'll start out with Melissa.
Thanks. So I would say at this point it's pretty good. I mean, from a bank perspective, we go through and do campus hiring every year. We hire into a lot of internship programs that then very often will turn into full-time opportunities. And I think it was Greg that mentioned at the beginning about finding a training program. So particularly at the bank, we have a lot of campus hiring programs that we put people through, kind of rotational opportunities, and are very intentional about making sure that we've got good training and good opportunities coming right off of campus. I would say probably the biggest change for us in the last year and a half has been the significant focus only on internal hiring. So when we went into the pandemic, Brian made a commitment to say, we're not going to, you know, have anybody get laid off. We want people to be able to stay employed, and we want to make sure that we can adapt with what's going on in the current environment. And so we had a lot of focus on internal hiring. We have just, I think, started doing some external hires again too, not too long ago. But a lot of opportunities for folks to be able to move around and do some different things. In addition to, you know, as PPP launched through the CARES Act, being able to stand up all of that work. There were thousands of us, me included, that got redeployed to work on some of that activity. So I would say overall, I think it is looking promising and looking good as we look at the industry today and the way that we've been able to adapt through the pandemic.
Thank you, Melissa. Marty, same question. What does the job market look like in your industry?
I think in the not just with my company, but in the industry as a whole, it's wide open. You know, the average age of a financial advisor is in their mid-50s. If you look at me, I'll be 52 this week. I'll actually be at the career fair on my birthday. So it is wide open for a young person. I think it's also wide open for people from diverse backgrounds. I think it's super wide open for females. You know, if you look at real estate across the country, you know, a lot of just regular real estate agents are female now, and 20 years ago it was predominantly male. And I think the financial industry will be headed that way as sooner than later. Females tend to be good listeners. Not saying we guys aren't, but I think sometimes females are more intimidated, or think you have to be a numbers person, or you know, fit a certain mold, and that way of thinking is a little outdated. And I might be a little biased because I raised a daughter myself, but I think the market is fantastic. There's a fantastic opportunity for young people in general and people from diverse backgrounds. And no matter what company you go to, again, if you work hard and you're just coachable and listen, there's a lot of business to be had and a lot of people that can be helped, and it's going to be needed. So again, I really think that's one reason I wanted to speak today is just young people have no idea how much they can help their, not just themselves, but future generations. But so thank you for that asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Greg, same question. Where do you see the job market in your industry right now?
I think the overall job market's really strong, and I would say that's coming from, a lot of the people that we go to, whether financing or whatever, that we are consistently getting emails from private equity firms and mezzanine financing firms, looking for analysts and associates. So those are, definitely folks in their 20s or potentially early 30s. So that there seems to be a lot of folks always looking for good people there. And then I think I think the banks today, particularly around Charlotte, there is so much competition for talent with, 5 to 10 years or more experience. You've got between 20 and 30 financial institutions with the major banks, with the major presence here in Charlotte. And all of those, I know you guys are probably 5 or 10 years away from that, but I think that the outlook will be, if you're thinking about a career in this space, and in particularly if you like the financing or the lending aspect of banking, that there should be significant opportunity over the next 10 or 20 years.
Okay, thank you. The next question is really based on, under the assumption that our students get their foot in the door, what are the opportunities for advancement for young workers, for young professionals in either in your company or within your industry or field or so? So we'll start out with you, Greg. So what are the opportunities for advancement once students get their foot in the door? You're muted. Greg, you're muted.
First, I'd say, with a lot of the companies that, whether Melissa or James, everybody work for today, are very large institutions. And, once you start within institutions of that size, it's really, it's a meritocracy, and the better you guys do and the more exposure you guys get, it's really unlimited advancement from my perspective. I do think that's where all the remote work and the pandemic really hurts. I think probably more than any single group of employees out there today are the ones that are really in the infancy of their careers and trying to build their careers. So they're not getting that walk around time around the more senior people. They're not getting the face-to-face exposure with more senior people. Even if they have a mentor, it's different when you're remote. So I think, hopefully for everybody on this call, as you guys move into the workforce, that's one thing we'll start to see change, because I do think having that face-to-face exposure is really important to your continued growth.
Melissa, same question, but building off what Greg just mentioned, are you seeing the same thing in terms of the restrictions or constraints because of remote work?
So we have actually started a return to office. So I am remote today, but we started our return to office actually early in the summer, and actually had several thousand associates in Charlotte return to office at the beginning of September. So we're kind of operating a little bit under a hybrid right now, where you're not necessarily in every day. It's kind of up to each team. But I do think it does make a big difference. I mean, there were some folks that I met through the pandemic, through some of the work that I was doing, that had joined the bank during the pandemic. And that was actually one of the things as we started to plan our return to office that was so critically important, is because all the people that we hired during the pandemic had never met their teammates, had never met their manager in person. We make extensive use of video call. So people were able to see each other, but to Greg's point, it's not exactly the same. So I think it has been nice to be able to get back to office, especially for some of our newer associates or our, more junior in their career associates, because it is hard when you're early in your career to not have that opportunity to walk over to somebody's desk and ask them a question, to have them walk you through it. or to go into a conference room and write it out on a whiteboard, to be, even some of the work I'm doing right now, we were doing virtual design sessions with 30 people on a WebEx call, and you're trying to do this creative human-centered design, and it's hard to do when everybody is remote. And so I think being able to get people back to the office will be a great thing. To the opportunities question, absolutely. Opportunities are, abundant. When you come in and you work hard, and one of the reasons that I love hiring from App, not only because I'm an alumni, but some of you all have heard me say before, there's a work ethic that I think App students come out with, which is really, really great, because when you come out and you work hard and you're willing to solve problems, you are going to be able to do well. And I think that work ethic comes from either it's cold in Boone, or you're walking uphill to class at least one way every day. So I think you guys just come out ready to go. And that's something that makes App grads really, really attractive to us. And we've had a lot of successful Appalachian grads come into the bank, both through our campus hiring programs and through other things. So as I said, I think the opportunities are great, and opportunities to move around and do different things. As I mentioned, I left CFO and looking at, opportunities beyond even the group that I'm in right now. So I think that, when you're at a large multinational company like we are, you can really reinvent your career several times without having to change companies, which is one of the things I really like about being at the bank.
Awesome. Marty, same question. What are the opportunities for advancement within your company?
Really, you could be a divisional vice president in 4 years. Honestly, it's amazing sometimes to me. It's all about work ethic, and I agree with the last speaker. I've been to a lot of major universities, not just in this state, other states, and not to mention any names at all. But App State people are very well rounded. They have a certain work ethic, maybe because of the demographic, maybe like you said, walking to the hills sometimes. But yeah, I have 2 App State grads on my team. I've hired several people from App that have gone on and done other things within the company. And so, yeah, I think the opportunities are endless. Again, go back to the average age, and it's in our industry is mid-50s from an advising standpoint. So, if the average age is 50, which that's for every 60-year-old, you have a 40-year-old, right? So you think about the opportunities for a young person. All these clients, all this work has to be done. And so somebody's got to do it. And working remote is mainly what we do. A lot of our folks have offices, but even their home office is registered with FINRA. So yeah, the opportunities are out there. If you're a go-getter, you can get any firm, you can get an opportunity. And if you work hard, you'll do well, very well.
All right. Brings me to another question that we have. Obviously, the pandemic has changed the way the world has worked over the past year and a half or so, almost 2 years now. The question I have for all 3 panelists is, how has technology really either disrupted your business or your position, or changed it for the better? So, and where do you see potential changes in technology over the next, say, 5 years that could potentially influence your role? We'll start out with Greg again. So how has technology either improved or disrupted what you do in your position?
I'd say a little bit of both, but much more on the improvement side. I would say we'll start with the disruption first, sort of the advent of virtual data rooms. If you went back 10 years ago and somebody was buying a company, when they talked about a data room, it was usually a conference room in a law firm's offices, and it would just have, box upon box upon box upon information that people would come in, and that's how they would do diligence on the company. Today, all that's virtual, it's all online. There's a lot of security that comes with that. That sounds like a good thing, but it's a little bit of a license to just continue to get so far into the weeds on diligence. So both the good and the bad. On the positive side, we completely upgraded all our software and hardware last year as a result of the pandemic, really allowing everyone to not only collaborate real time on documents, but also work remotely from anywhere. So that's been great. And then just from a business development and marketing standpoint, I mean, honestly, a lot of the events we used to go to that were just painful to go and sit in a conference room all day long, to now be able to do a lot of those marketing type events remotely. Honestly, it's just been terrific, and we're trying to convince a lot of those organizations to continue to do those things remotely, even as things come back to normal.
All right, thank you, Greg. Melissa, same question. How has technology either disrupted or improved what you do in your position at Bank of America?
Well, I'll say, first of all, just overall from a bank perspective, our former CFO used to say, he goes, you know, we're a technology company that looks like a bank. So the technology is so important to us. And when you think about, you know, client security and making sure that we can, you know, have the information that is needed when it's needed is really, really important. One of the things during the pandemic is that we saw, you know, even more growth in our digital users. So we've got actually 40 million digital consumer users these days. So definitely very important to us, and something that we were happy to have in place that folks could take advantage of during the pandemic. I think for my personal role, being able to, you know, do things with WebEx and being able to have video, and, you know, I was always somebody that I like to print out a document to be able to review it. Well, based on security stuff, you know, we've not been allowed to print at home. So I've had to adapt my skill set when I'm reviewing or editing things to be able to do all of that online as well. So I think that overall, just being able to make sure that we can continue to build the technology and create the processes that need to be able to run the bank, you know, effectively and efficiently. So one of the things within our process improvement team that we have talked about is that, you know, you always improve your process and then apply technology to it, because you don't want to automate or, you know, make smoother a bad process. So you really want to make sure that you're constantly focused on optimize your process and then optimize the technology to be able to support that work. So that's kind of where I would say, but we are definitely very technology focused. And something that we put a lot of emphasis on.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Marty, same question. How has technology either improved or potentially disrupted what you do?
I think when the pandemic first started, just like everyone, it took us back a bit for a couple months. Fortunately, the company had invested a lot of money and time in having the technology, so we were in good shape there. The only problem was waiting till other people got up to speed, you know, clients and that kind of thing. And so I think what the good that came out of this is a lot of people are more computer literate now. If you think about even the educators across the state that now know how to do video chats. And so our hospitals or churches or business owners that never turned their computer on before, right? Now they're doing video chats. I do agree with Greg. We used to do a lot of meetings where it's just brutal sitting in a conference room all day. And I think we've kind of fine-tuned that a little bit where we don't have to do that. And so that was definitely a challenge. But overall, since we had the technology in place, it's worked out really well, because now I feel like we can do a hybrid of sorts where, you know, some people are still going to want to meet face-to-face. That's just the way it is. But you can do a lot of things, especially when you have clients in other states through video conference, that you really can't, from a time standpoint, you just can't take it for granted. It's so efficient. So I think that's the challenges and the good, the bad, and the ugly there.
Okay, thank you, Marty. We have two more questions. They're both highly related, but the first question I'll start out with is, what advice would you give students that are looking to explore a career in finance? What are some of the potential challenges that they're going to face in the job market? Do you see any potential changes in terms of competition from other students and all that? We'll start out with you, Melissa. So what advice would you give somebody who's graduating either in the next 6 months or next year? They're going to walk out with a degree in finance from App State. What advice would you give them right off the bat?
So the first thing I would do is really, I mentioned earlier that having a degree in finance, you can go and do lots and lots of different things with it. So I would definitely spend some time getting to know people that are in different industries and doing different kinds of work, because they've all started with that same educational background. but there's so many different avenues that you can take. And thankfully, coming out of App State, you see people that are in all of those different avenues. So I would definitely take time, leverage the resources you have there on campus to be able to meet people that are in lots of the different industries, talk to them, get to know what they do, understand, what is their job, what do they like about it, what drew them there. Because I think that as you talk to folks that are doing different kinds of work, you'll start to figure out where your interests may align. So I think that that's one of the biggest things that you can do is get to know people, because it also helps build your network right out of the gate. But getting to know people who are maybe a year or two out of school, and then talk to people that are 5 and 10 years out of school, or then 20 years out of school, and really understand those career opportunities and career paths as you start to think about where you might want to interview and where you might want to start from an industry perspective.
Okay, Marty, same question.
So well said. When there's so many firms and so many different aspects in the financial world, I think you have to do your due diligence. Again, if you're coachable and you have work ethic, I preach it all the time, then you can do anything, right? That might be the military mindset in me, but if you work hard, you can do anything. But I think it's fun if you can do things that you like to do, right? And if you want to be work in a back room somewhere, you don't want to be around a lot of people, but you like numbers and you want to, crunch numbers and you want to be an analytical type person, then you don't need to go into a role where you're going to be in front of people all day, because you might not be happy. And I think it goes as well as if you're a very social butterfly, if you will, you don't want to be an analytical type person, right? You might not want to be stuck in a back room. So I just think, and that's maybe a poor example, but I just think you have to find out what you want to do or would like to do, and then try to find a firm or a company that can allow you to do those things. And you'll never work a day of your life, because you'll be doing something that you enjoy.
Absolutely, Marty. I completely agree with that. Greg, same question. What advice would you give to a upcoming App State graduate in terms of getting into a career in finance?
I would completely echo all the comments before, and in particular what Melissa said. I mean, I don't know that anybody could say it any better than that. But I do think, when we're up for our meetings and we talk to Michelle Beauclair and the folks over in Career Services, is, one thing is the first destination is not necessarily meant to be the last destination. So, I asked my father a question the other day, and he goes, well, it's not like you're going to jail. If you don't like that, just pick something else. So that might be a little harsh, but it's really true. But I think more than anything, as a finance major, and again, this is really echoing some of what Michelle said, you guys can go into any industry and any area of industry you want to. It's completely transportable. As James was saying, whether it's if it's more business development out in front of people, or it's more analytical, it doesn't have to be finance. It could be a bicycle manufacturing company. It can be anything you want it to be. So that is, as you step out and start interviewing for jobs, I would absolutely take the approach of, any company I want to work for, they should want me, because that's how transportable and how valuable your education is.
All right, thank you, Greg. So it brings me to my last question. It's highly related to the last one I just mentioned. So if you could go back in time, we have a time capsule, we can go back and you could talk to your college age self. What advice would you give to your college age self in terms of prepping yourself for the career that you're eventually going to have? And we'll start out with Greg.
Well, for me, it'd probably be pretty simple. I would have had a much clearer understanding with my father of whether I was going to work in the family business when I graduated or not, because that would have led me into a much more important decision, which is start looking for a job about a year sooner than I did. So, I think, I did do an internship back in 1980. It was actually a paid internship. I moved to Charlotte and worked 40 hours a week. I took some courses. They weren't online back then, but there were like extension courses or whatever, but they were effectively remote learning in my internship. So I think that was great. And it would have, had I known really at that time that was the time to be, looking for a job, I think that would have really changed. My career may not have changed that much, but certainly my first job would have probably been a lot different.
All right, thank you, Greg. Melissa, same question. Go back to your college age self. What advice would you give to get you better prepared for your career?
Yeah, I think a lot of it would probably be around some of the folks that I worked with early on, kind of maintaining some of those relationships more. Like I mentioned, I spent 5 years at KPMG, and then once I left KPMG and I went to work for Selectron, I stayed in touch with a few people. But it was interesting as I came back around to the bank, how many of us from KPMG are at the bank. And so it was, you rebuilt some of those relationships, but I think that it would have been nice to just continue to maintain those. So, one of the things that you'll find as you go through your career, and I think it's any industry that you're in, is, being someone that people always want to work with, because then they want to work with you. And, if people don't want to work with you, they're going to figure out how not to. And very often you need for them to work with you so you can get your job done. And that, let me be clear, that doesn't mean saying yes all the time. That doesn't mean, but making sure that that you are, just being someone that people want to be around, that you're delivering, that you're working hard, and doing that right out of the gate. I think the other thing that I would say is when you first start your first job, understand that your employer knows that you have an education, but that you do not know what you're doing. And so ask questions. Don't hesitate to ask questions when you go into your first job, and be curious about what you're doing and asking the whys of why you're doing things, because I think that will help you come up the learning curve in whatever industry you're in as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Marty, same question. Let's go back in time. You want to talk to your college age self. What advice would you give yourself in preparing for your career in finance?
Yeah, I think I'm maybe a little different because, I spent five and a half years in the military first, but I was very focused on getting through school. Would not have been that way if I'd went to school right out of high school, for sure. So I was very focused on getting through school and getting a job. I ended up with a really good job, good career for about 13 years. But to add to Greg's point, just because it's where you end up, that doesn't mean you have to stay there as well. I wish I would have gotten in this industry a lot sooner. And I think sometimes it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You just have to find something that you're happy doing. I worked, I'd make $140,000, $50,000 a year. And I don't mean that in a boastful way. And I did that for 13 years for a company that I did not really did not like what I was doing, didn't enjoy it. And I was working 70 hours a week. My point is, sometimes it's not. I think when we come out of college, we think it's all about the money, or, if I can get this job, or this job's paying $5,000 more a year. And, if they stick you in a back office and you're a social person, then that's not the job for you, I assure you, because you're going to hate it in 2 weeks. I think now's the time at the career fair and things like that. You need to go around and talk to everyone. You need to go talk with Greg, Melissa, myself, everyone, and not just the financial industry. I think you need to, explore your options. And that's something I didn't do. I took a really good paying job and, was going to hang in there and it's not worth it. It'll give you gray hair really quick and you'll be miserable. And so I would say explore all your options and then make a decision, and then talk with your board of directors, which might be your mom and dad or friends, family, significant others. Talk to them and ask them what they think about your decisions and what do you think about this avenue or that avenue. It's something I didn't do. I think I just kind of thought I knew everything, and we don't. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that, Justin.
All right, thank you. We have about 10 minutes left over, and obviously this is for our students, so I want to give them an opportunity to ask questions to our panelists. So If you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask. If you're too shy, you can send it via chat and I will ask it for you. So I'm going to give our students 10 minutes.
Hi, my name is Luis. I'm a junior here at App State. I have a question for you guys. How would you deal with like a client's concern about working with someone due to their like youth and like inexperience? Like what are some things that can help with that?
So I think the question's about helping out potential employees that are just youthful, inexperienced. What advice would you provide?
I'm happy to give you a quick answer. In my opinion, your youth is your advantage. Okay. Most people are like me in the industry. They're older. They've been around a while. They might not have as much energy. Use your attributes to your advantage. You're full of energy. You can work all day. You don't have a lot of commitments, family, and that kind of thing. You can put in the hours that it takes. I think your energy level, your work ethic, and your youth is good in some ways, right? You're just now graduating. Think about the people that graduated 20 years ago, 30, like myself, right? What did we have to learn in general versus what people have learned today? What has the market done, for example, in the last 30 years? So I think your youth is an advantage. And I think you just have to come up with, some people will say the elevator speech, but I don't know if I like elevator speeches, but I think you just have to, hey, I know I'm young, but I am a, fully licensed financial advisor, and I graduated from Appalachian State. And, I think you just have to have a story to tell. And I think sometimes people that have a little bit of, age or experience on them, like myself, that just makes it endearing to them, where we want to take you under our wing and help you as much as possible. And I think sometimes acknowledging that you don't know everything, like Melissa said, I think that's the key.
All right, thank you, Marty. Are there any other questions?
Justin, I might add just a little bit to what Marty said relative to Luis's question and it's a comment that Melissa made about asking questions. You're not expected to know anything when you start that job. So they're hiring you because of your personality and your skill set, and you're going to learn. So again, I think the comment that Melissa made is a great one. And we tell our clients this: the only dumb question is the one you didn't ask. So you've got to reach out and ask questions. It shows an interest and a willingness to learn. And, and there's no substitute for initiative either. What Marty was saying about working hard and your energy, but initiative is important as well. Don't just wait for somebody to give you a task to do. Show that initiative. The way to get noticed is to show initiative.
Yeah, I agree with what Greg said. And I think that you all too coming in, you can be very innovative. You think differently than people who came out 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You're at a different place in your life. So I would definitely take advantage of that. And as Greg said, it's just one of those: come out, work hard, and take advantage of the fact that you are early in your career, and ask the whys. I always encourage, when we hire folks straight off of campus and they come in, and I tell them, I'm like, ask someone why they do that. Because if they can't really articulate why it is they do something the way they do it, then maybe it's time to rethink it. Maybe there's a better way to do it. And someone coming in with a fresh perspective and a new perspective, very often you're going to be the one asking the why, because you're trying to understand and you're trying to learn, but it can also lead to being able to improve the way that we do the work that we do.
All right. Professor McNeil, did you want to chime in? Did you have a question yourself?
I do have a question. So first of all, though, thank for the panelists for being here and the students as well. A couple of related questions. In terms of, I'll call it hard skills, we have some latitude. Students have some latitude about what classes they take as electives. Would there be anything in particular you might suggest in that regard? And the other question is, are extracurriculars important to to you folks as you look toward hiring folks out of college?
I can start if you want me to. So extracurriculars, I'll start and kind of go backwards. Absolutely. We are going to look for somebody who is well-rounded. We want you to be able to have the academic, success, but want you to also, potentially have had leadership roles, or maybe you've worked your way through school, or you were on, a sports team or an intramural team. So certainly looking for people who are well-rounded. The other piece, when you talk about the skills coming in, I think that two of the things, at least from a bank perspective, that I've seen when people come in and are particularly successful, one is communication skills. So whether that is you take a class about communication skills, or whether you just are getting involved in different things on campus, being able to come in and know, well, when should I walk over and talk to someone in person? When should I, instant message them? When should I call them? When should I email them? And being able to adjust your communication skills and do it effectively with different people you work with. And that might be different personality types. It might be different generations. It might be different, backgrounds or skill sets. So I think being able to be an effective communicator is really important. And then the other piece, particularly for the bank, that we do look for is, we have so much data. And so being able to take data and turn it into information is really important. And I know that there are a couple of classes on campus, whether it's, some of the data science classes, or even the Excel class, I think that's offered through finance and banking. I think it's required now, but I've heard it referred to as the Excel class, is really helpful, because then when you come in into the bank, you're able to, jump in and be able to start contributing right away.
Chris, I would agree with that. From our perspective, at least in our company, even an analyst or an associate is going to be client facing almost immediately. So you've got to be able to speak, talk on the phone. The progression in our firm, and I think in most investment banking firms, is you also have to be able to write, because eventually you're going to have to put things down on paper for an investor or a buyer to read and understand the story. So you've got to be able to be a storyteller. From a technology standpoint, really just the basics. I mean, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, but everybody that comes along next year should be more proficient in those basic software programs as the group before. They've just been around another year longer. You guys have been, my kids were doing PowerPoints in kindergarten. I didn't do my first PowerPoint until I was 40. So, they had a 35-year head start on me. So from a technology standpoint, I think that's really important as well. And then just to do our job from a mathematical standpoint, if you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, that's it. No geometry, no trig, no algebra, no engineering. Add, subtract, multiply, and divide. You can do those four things, and you can speak and write, you can do our job.
No calculus?
Definitely no. There might be a little AB calculus in there, but there's no CD calculus.
I'm teaching the wrong things to my students then. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I never understood why I had to take calculus.
All right. I've got 126. Are there any other questions for our panelists? Well, if I don't see any hands or get any chat messages, we'll call it.
I'm sorry. I got one more question.
All right. I'm sorry, Lewis. Go ahead.
No, you're good. What resources do you guys use to stay up with current events to keep you informed about what's going on in the industry?
So what resources are you using to stay current on changes to your industry, potential impact on your position at your company?
I mean, I'll tell you from a bank perspective, we're very fortunate that we have our own internal website. So if there are big changes going on, lots of times it pops up on our Flagscape page when you first log on in the morning. So I do just leverage some of our internal communications rather than necessarily going out and reading the Wall Street Journal every day or something like that. So I use our internal resources.
Yeah, I would second that. I would say the main thing is, Greg said you need to know how to write. You need to know how to read as well. I think a lot of times you got to read those emails. It might not be fun sometimes, but you got to read them, and you have to read through laws that change, just like Greg mentioned earlier, laws that are being discussed right now. You have to stay on top of that stuff. And a lot of times your firm will email out, changes like Reg BI or something like that. And you need to be aware of what's going on. And you can be a teammate, a good teammate, when you do that by helping others, that may not can read as well as you do.
Yeah, as a small firm, lots of news feeds, lots of emails from wealth management firms, accounting firms, law firms, FA magazine, that you just, unfortunately, you can't just put all that in your junk folder, so you have to screen a lot of the subject lines, but a lot of great information in there. We've got some proprietary subscriptions as well that really help us specific to some industries and mergers and acquisitions as well.
Well, thank you, Greg. It is 1:29. Let's bring this panel to an end. So I want to